Once you told someone the truth, there was no way of untelling it. And they were trapped in a box with that knowledge for the rest of their lives, unable to escape.
I want to give a quick shout out to my patrons. Thank you so much for your support.
Hey y'all, it's Kate from the Literary Apothecary and welcome back to my channel. Now today we're going to be doing something a little bit different, and as kind of a spin-off to the Books My Boyfriend Gave Me series, I'm going to be starting a new series about video game books. So basically books based off of video games. This was kind of John's idea, and I thought it would be a fun idea and something different that you don't see a lot on BookTube. So today we're going to be talking about Aspho Fields by Karen Traviss. This is book 1 in the Gears of War series. So this series of books is based off of the Gears of War video games, which is also really cool because 1, this is one of John's favorite video game series, and 2, the company that produces that video game series is located here in North Carolina, so it's a really fun touch to it. I gave this book 3 out of 5 stars, and I'll talk about why in just a minute, but first let's get a spoiler-free summary of what Aspho Fields is all about. This is an in-depth look at Delta Squad's toughest fighters, the soldier Marcus Phoenix and rock-solid Dominic Santiago, as well as a detailed account of the pivotal battle of the Pendulum Wars. So if you've played the Gears of War series before, you'll recognize some of these names, some of the battles that we're going to be talking about. Of course, this is still a spoiler-free summary, so if you haven't played those games, you won't miss out on anything. As kids, the 3 of them were inseparable. As soldiers, they were torn apart. Marcus Phoenix and Dom Santiago fought alongside Dom's elder brother, Carlos, at Aspho Fields in the epic battle that changed the course of the Pendulum Wars. There's a new war to fight now. A war for mankind's very survival, but ghosts are brought up as Marcus and Dom fight for their race's survival. Now, like I said, I gave this book 3 out of 5 stars, and I'll preface this next part by saying that this was the first video game book that I had ever read. So I wasn't used to the style of the writing. Didn't know any of the characters or the world or anything like that before I jumped in. Since I finished the first book and I've moved on to book 2, John has kind of played one of the games a little bit for me so I can get used to the world and how it looks in the video game and the different characters and their different weapons and whatnot, and I'll talk about that in just a minute. So what worked for me in this book is the introduction to this world. I thought that this is essentially a prequel to the video game series, so you don't get this anything that happens in this book necessarily in the video game series, but this was a great introduction to that world that you do get immersed in the video games. I thought that Karen Traviss portrayed the military mentality really well. There's another quote that I wrote down about how soldiers do what they do because it's the right thing and it's for their other soldiers, and that's all they know how to do. That's all they know what to do. And that quote just felt like really captured the mentality of someone in the military. And I thought the storyline was great in this book. Even though sometimes it was hard to follow, I felt like it portrayed a great story well. Now, what didn't work for me, like I just mentioned, the storyline was hard to follow at times because we bounced from point of view to point of view and also from different timelines. And so we went from essentially the present day and we had flashbacks, but the flashbacks felt like they were present day because of the way that they were written. And it read a lot like a video game, which is both good and bad in a novel, because it's great because, this was written after a video game, about a video game, so it embraced that mentality of it and those aspects, but it's also hard to follow in a written narrative form. That's supposed to be one solid line. Also, the characters felt a little flat and static for me. It didn't feel like there was a lot of development with them, and we didn't really get a lot of deep dives into who the characters were, so it was hard to kind of feel for the characters or get attached to any of the characters, really. So another thing that kind of didn't work for me in book 1 but has gotten better in book 2, and I mentioned this earlier, that John started playing one of the video games for me before, so I got to see some of the elements that were hard for me to imagine just reading the book straight through without having any experience with the video game. So I was able to see our characters, I was able to see our world and the enemies. So I got this, reading it, I got the idea that this was supposed to take place on an Earth-like world, with what I thought were like these aliens, these monsters, and you know, the video games, they portrayed them as monsters, but John explained they're also kind of human-like too. They use our similar weapons to our main characters and kind of build on them and sometimes make them even better. Which is another point. I was able to actually see the weapons that our gears use, where when I was reading Aspho Fields, I thought, is this one weapon put together or is this 2 different weapons? Because it described kind of a gun, like an assault rifle, with a chainsaw. So I was trying to figure out if they were 2 different weapons or if they were the same weapon. Watching the video game, I learned that they are the same weapon. The chainsaw is just attached to the gun. So seeing the video game in person helps me now go forward and be able to imagine some of these other things that I had a hard time imagining and picturing during the first book. But I did enjoy it enough to continue with this series. So right now I'm working on book 2, which is called Jacinto's Remnant. And I'll continue this video game series until I finish the Gears of War books. And then I will probably swing back to more books my boyfriend gave me. And then maybe eventually somewhere down the road get back to video games, because I know John is really liking hearing my thoughts about these. So if you've read Aspho Fields before, let me know in the comments below what your thoughts were. If you've played the Gears of War video games before, let me know in the comments below if I'm on track with my thoughts for this series. You know, if you felt the same way about the characters than I did. If you want to see my chapter to chapter, my reactions as I'm reading it, come join the Discord, because I have reading vlogs for all these videos there. As always, my Patreon and my Discord information will be in the description below. Keep reading, and I love y'all to the moon and back. Bye.